Hi, my name is Debbie Hughes. I am with the Office of Family and Community Engagement, and I'm here tonight to introduce Anita Weich. Anita, I'm going to let you take it away as my screen is flipping out. But one of the things I wanted to mention is Anita has been with Bank on Hampton Roads for 5 years, and she is here to talk about financial literacy with us. Thank you so much, Anita.
Thank you, Debbie, for having me. As Debbie said, my name is Anita Weich. I work for the City of Virginia Beach Department of Human Services, and I oversee a program called Bank on Hampton Roads. And this is a collaboration between three cities, the city of Norfolk, Chesapeake, and Virginia Beach. And along with that collaboration and our volunteers, that's how we're able to bring the financial education classes and coaching to our community for free. So, thank you once again. Next slide. Today, what we're going to do is just take a quick look at your financial life. Next slide. Whenever I do a presentation, I always start by asking people what comes to mind when you think of financial literacy, because typically that's not something we just think about on a regular basis. Next slide, please. So, to me, financial literacy is just possessing a set of skills and knowledge that allows an individual to make informed and effective decisions when it comes to their finances, their money, the retirements, those types of things. It's also an understanding of the concepts, which include savings, budgeting, investing, and your debt, because those things together, along with the financial literacy, leads to an overall sense of financial well being and self trust. And the easiest way to get financial literacy or to understand it is through financial education. So, just similar to little courses like this that we're doing today. Next slide, please. So, why is financial literacy so important? What we see in our program is when you are not financially literate or you don't have that knowledge, you can run into a number of pitfalls. One of the pitfalls is accumulating unnecessary debt, also making poor spending decisions, not being financially prepared for the future. And all three of those things really can lead to poor credit also. Next slide, please. So, some of the key components of financial literacy and the things we want people to understand is earning, what you're doing with your paycheck, savings, paying yourself first, how you're spending that money. Are you investing that money that you're earning? And also, how are you protecting those things? So, those are some of the things we're going to touch on today. Next slide. The first thing I want to touch on is paying yourself first. Next slide with paying yourself first. In many instances, when we talk about paying yourself first, people are like, what are you talking about? Basically, paying yourself first is when you set aside money for your financial goals and emergencies before you spend any money. And I'm talking before you pay any bills or anything like that. And having a pay yourself first mindset means that you should pay your own investments and savings first. You are essentially paying your future self by saving for long term needs and expenses. Next slide, please. Now, one of the things we always hear is, how can I pay myself first when I don't even have enough money to pay my bills, or I have just enough money to pay my bills? So, the things we want to talk about is just the importance of saving money. When you are paying yourself first or saving money, it helps to protect you in the event of an emergency. So, say for instance, you leave here tonight and you hit a pothole and it blows your tire and you need $300, because typically an emergency is anywhere from $300 to $500. You need $300 and you don't have that money. And so when you're saving, you can go to your little emergency fund and say, ooh, I have that $300. So now I can get that tire. When you are saving, the reason it's important to save is it helps you to pay for those purchases and to avoid debt. So you ran into that pothole, it was $300 to fix that tire. You didn't have any emergency funding. So you had to put it on a credit card. So you had to pay for that purchase on a credit card, which in the long run cost you to have more debt, because now you're charging and you're going to pay interest. The importance of saving money also, it can reduce financial stress. When you know that you have that little nest egg set to the side to pay for that hot water tank that blows or that tire, it's less stress than you're sitting there thinking, oh my God, can I borrow it from the bank? Do I have enough left on my credit card? Do I have a family member or friend that can loan me that money? So, the importance of savings, the big picture is it provides a greater sense of financial freedom when you have your own nest egg set aside. Next slide, please. So, we always talk about the four types of savings. We're talking about savings for emergencies, retirement, periodic expenses, and short term goals. So, we just talked about saving for emergencies. And saving for emergencies is just saving for that hot water tank, trying to have that 300 to maybe $1,000 set aside for those emergencies. Savings for retirement is a big deal. And saving for retirement, we're looking at if you're employed and you've worked with your HR department and they have a 401k or 403b. That's a great way to save for retirement. Now, a quick thing is if you are at a company and they have a 401k and they do a match and you're not contributing to that 401k, you're giving money away. I don't care if it's only 2% that they are matching. If you're not doing that 401k, then you're leaving money on the table. So if you are not, go into your HR department tomorrow and talk to them about the 401k and see how you can start contributing. Saving for periodic expenses is a big one. Every year, periodic expenses are birthdays, Christmas, personal property taxes. So, example, we know every year, December 25th, Christmas is coming. And what inevitably happens is October rolls around, October 15th, and that light bulb comes on, and you're like, oh my God, Christmas is here. I haven't saved anything, and my son asked for a PlayStation 5. So at that point, we're starting to figure out how we can move this bill, or as people say, rob Peter to pay Paul, or we're putting it on a credit card. What we suggest is with periodic expenses like Christmas, once Christmas passes this year, if you haven't already started saving, sit down and look at how much you could put aside each month so that when October or November rolls around, you have already started saving and you have a little nest egg for that periodic expense that is known as Christmas. And then saving for short term basically is, say for instance you want to buy a car and you know it's going to have a down payment that you have to make. So say, okay, in 6 months I have to have a down payment of $1,000, so I am going to save X number of dollars each month to meet this short-term goal. So those are the four pockets that we really talk about when we're talking about the types of savings. Next slide, please. So just some tips for savings. Other than the emergency savings, I tell people to start with a saving goal. Look at what it is you're saving for and how much you want to have in that bucket. And then that's a good starting point for how to save. Save what is comfortable for you. The rule of thumb is that you should be saving at least 10% of each of your paychecks. However, in some instances, that's not doable. So when we're teaching our classes, we tell people save what's comfortable. If starting out, you can only save $5 or $10 a pay period, set that aside and save that until you're able to up that amount. Save your change. Last year, I got into the habit of, and it's rare that I have cash, but I got into the habit of whenever I came home at the end of the day, I would save my change. I have a jar, I put change in it. Sometimes if I have dollar bills, I put dollar bills in there. So over the course of last year, just by saving dollars and change, I, at the end of the year, had saved almost $400, which was cool because I could use that towards some of my Christmas spending. Save your bonuses and raises. So each year, hopefully, you're able to get a raise at your job. Well, for that past year, you've been able to live off of the earnings that you have been able that you're making at that time. So if you get a raise and instead of adding more bills or starting to spend more money on things, take that extra money that you're getting from the raise and put it in a savings because you're already accustomed on living on one amount. That raise is a good way to beef up your savings. Cancel subscriptions and memberships. I was bad at this. I had a membership at Planet Fitness. It was only $15 a month, but during COVID, I wasn't going. But I was like, oh, it's only $15. But in the end, if you sit down and you add up those $15 a month that you're just giving Planet Fitness, or those magazine subscriptions that you don't even read anymore, that's money that you can be saving. So when you leave here today, take time out and say, hey, am I going to Planet Fitness, or am I reading those magazines? And if not, cancel those subscriptions. Go to the library, get a library card, and you can read as many magazines as you want for free. Eating out fewer times. A lot of times we'll say, oh, I went to Wendy's for the 4 for $4. So that wasn't that much. But in the big scheme of things, if you're doing Wendy's 4 for $4 every day and you're eating out every day, just kind of sit back and calculate how much you're spending eating out, even if that's your lunch. And think about, do I eat out other times other than lunch? And we're not going to tell you not to eat out, but just eat out fewer times and save that money. And then some apps now have where when you swipe some of your Visa check cards, it automatically rounds up to the nearest dollar. So if your tab came to $4.50, it's going to round up to $5. $4.50 going to pay that bill, and the other 50 cents is going to go into a savings. That's a great way. But as you see on my slide, automatic savings, I have it highlighted and bolded. That's the easiest way to save. Out of sight, out of mind. So if you either can go to your human resources department, or you can go to your bank and say, okay, I have this amount going to my primary account, but now I want $50 every pay period to go to another account. So once you go to your primary account that you're paying your bills out of, you're not going to see that $50. It's already taken out. And you're going to see how quickly you adjust and you're able to live without that $50 a pay period. So automatic savings is the way to go. Next slide, please. So we've talked about paying yourself first. And the reason I started off with that is because now we're going to go into budgeting. And I wanted to get into your head that you should treat yourself, when it comes to paying yourself first and savings, you should treat yourself as a bill and a line item on your budget. So next slide, please. So the benefits of a spending plan. I know I started out by calling it a budget, but whenever I am doing presentations, people are like, oh, budget sounds so restrictive. So whether you call it a spending plan or a budget, we need you to get on track to start doing that. And then basically the benefits of a spending plan is that you're going to be able to put aside money for savings goals. It help you to be prepared for your regular expenses, and it prepares you for unexpected expenses. It also helps you to control how you spend your money, because if you know that you are going to be spending your money and you're going to have that budget that you're doing, then what's going to happen is you're going to be able to look at how much you have coming in, how much you have going out. So you're going to see exactly where that money is going. And it's going to reduce your stress and increase your confidence. And it helps to ensure you have enough money for your wants and needs. Next slide, please. So consequences of not having a spending plan. Really, when you don't have a spending plan, you don't have any idea where you're spending your money. Also, if you have a bad habit of going to Wawa and saying, okay, I'm going to get that, once I pay for my gas, I'm going to get that donut and coffee. Some of those are spending habits that you don't identify. And then when you don't have that spending plan and tell your money where it should be going, you're not prepared for those emergencies. One of the big ones, especially for married couples or partners, it can cause a strain on your relationship if both of your incomes are supposed to be coming into the household and to pay bills, and you each are responsible for saying, well, I'm going to make sure I have this amount when it's time to pay a bill. If you have that one spending plan or budget that you do together, then you can ensure how much you need out of each check. And then any money's left over, like in my household, we have allowances. So once we know all the bills that we need to pay, my husband has a certain amount that goes to his play fund or whatever he wants to do, probably his motorcycle fund. And I have money that goes into my account. And those are the funds we spend. But we don't have that strain or stress on our relationship because we know our bills are paid, we're saving, and then we do have money to do things that we want to do. So it does cut down on undue stress. Next slide, please. So when you are starting to do a budget or a spending plan, you want to always consider your wants versus your needs. Now, when you're doing a spending plan, don't look at what your friend includes in her spending plan. This spending plan is going to be unique to you and your household because everybody's wants and needs are different. But of course, everybody is going to have housing. That is a need. So that's going to be one of the top things you're going to see on there. Transportation. For some people, transportation is a want. For some people, transportation is a need. If you're living in New York City, transportation is probably a want because their public transportation is great. If you're living in a little city like I grew up in Hopewell, Virginia, 22,000 people, transportation or public transportation, you may see a bus come by every 3 or 4 hours. Then transportation to get back and forth is definitely a need. So once you're starting to look at building that spending plan, sit down and look at what's a need. I have some older people that come through our program. A cell phone is a want. They still have their landline. So for them, you're not going to see cell phone in that top 5 category. Like with us or with me, my cell phone is attached to my hip. So that's going to be a need for me. So next slide, please. So just tips for developing a spending plan. The one thing I tell people before they even start doing a spending plan, do a spending diary. So for one entire month, write down everything you spend money on. I don't care if it's the $1.50 tea at McDonald's or it's the $30 meal that you had with your friends when you went out. Write down everything that you're spending money on. Then at the end of that month, you can sit down and you can identify what we call money leaks, where you're spending additional money that you really don't have in your budget. And you can look at that spending diary and categorize things. You know, what's a want, what's a need. And then once you start doing that budget, you'll be able to take that spending diary and say, okay, my God, I spent $400 eating out last month. So I love to eat out. So maybe instead of spending $400 eating out, I'm going to cut it down to $200. So that spending diary is going to really help you get on track. Start with those most important categories. Like I said, your utilities, you're paying yourself first, your housing. Make sure that you do a plan and you stick with it. And do your budget based on your pay schedule. So if you get paid every 2 weeks, then do your budget every 2 weeks and look at that calendar and write down what you know you need to pay every 2 weeks. This is one that I have to really do when I go to the grocery store. Use cash for categories that I typically overspend in. When I go to the grocery store, if I'm using my Visa check card, I can say, okay, for groceries, I'm going to spend $250. But if I walk past that pint of Ben and Jerry's ice cream that wasn't on my budget, or if I'm in Target and I see this cute little sweater, not groceries, but it's in the grocery store, I put it in there. So when I get to the register, instead of being $250, it's now $300. So I'm over budget, but I swipe and I leave with my stuff. What I have started to do, I write my list of everything that I need at the grocery store and I take cash. Because when I'm in Target, if I say I'm going to spend $250 and I get to the register and I picked up stuff that is not on my list and it's $300, Target is not letting me leave there with $300 worth of stuff and I only have $250. So that helps me to not overspend. So if you have an area that you think you're going to overspend in, use cash. Review and evaluate your plan. Like I said, your plan can change. Say, for instance, you could have a car payment for February, and that car payment goes away in March. What are you going to do with that extra money? Are you going to take that money and add more to your savings? Are you going to take that money and start paying off some of that debt you have? So every month, just reevaluate your plan and know that things can change and be patient. If you've never done a budget, it's going to take a minute to get into the habit of doing that budget. And if you fall off the wagon, like with anything, dieting or any exercising, if you fall off the wagon, then just know I fell off this 2 weeks. I'm going to get back on in 2 weeks and make sure I stick to my spending plan. Next slide, please. So those are some tips about spending and the spending plan. The next one is understanding your credit. Next slide, please. Now, with credit, like I stated, with not having a budget and not saving, sometimes those things can lead to us not having good credit. So, what is credit? Basically, it's just the ability to borrow money or access goods or services with the understanding that you will pay that creditor later. Next slide. So, what is your credit report? Next slide, please. So basically, a credit report is a statement of information that tells about your credit activity and your current credit situation. So basically, with that credit report, it's going to tell a lender your credit worthiness, who you are, how much debt you have, and whether you make your payments on time, if you have any negative information that's being reported in public records. So overall, that credit report tells a lender, should I trust Anita and should I loan her any more money? Next slide, please. So with the credit report, we tell people to make sure you're checking your credit report because there could be things on that credit report that don't belong to you. So where can you get a free copy of your credit report? If you go to annualcreditreport.com, you can get a free copy of your credit report. And because of COVID, typically you can only run your credit report once per year. But because of COVID, if you go to annualcreditreport.com, you can run your credit report from all 3 credit bureaus. You can run them every week for the rest of this year, and it is free. Next slide, please. So, in addition to your credit report, is your credit report and the credit score. So, your credit score is a number from 300 to 850 that is used to predict how likely you are to pay back your loan and pay it on time. So credit scores are used by companies to make decisions such as, am I going to give her a loan? Am I going to give her a mortgage or a credit card? The higher your credit score, the better a borrower looks to a potential lender. So that's why it's so important to keep track on that credit score. Next slide, please. So this chart right here we're showing is score levels. Now, if you already have a credit card, you can go to that credit thing on your credit card and it will show on your app or at your bank what your credit score is. However, if you don't have access to that, I tell people you can check it through Credit Karma and Credit Sesame. Now, with Credit Karma and Credit Sesame, that's not what banks and lenders use. However, it will give you a good guide and a good idea of where you stand on your credit and what you need to do to start trying to improve your credit. But when you're looking at this chart, these are the numbers that we're talking about that the banks look at. So if I walk into Navy Federal and I have a 750 credit score, very good. 9 times out of 10, they're going to be like, yeah, Anita, we can loan you money. They're going to loan me money. I'm going to get a really good interest rate and, how much I can borrow and my interest rate. That's what happens if you have very good or exceptional credit. If you go into a bank and your credit is poor, then they're probably going to deny you. And they may not even tell you if you get a cosigner. They may tell you you need to work on your credit. If you go in and your credit is fair, and you go into Navy Fed or any institution, I just use Navy Fed because that's who I bank with, um, and your credit is fair, they may say, okay, Anita, well, your credit isn't that bad. However, you do have some blemishes. So if you can get a cosigner, then we can give you the loan. And then you try to get a cosigner, you come back in. And sometimes even with the cosigner, you're not going to get a an interest rate that's as good as somebody that has very good or exceptional credit. So that this chart, like I said, kind of tells where your score falls and what you can kind of expect when you go into a lender to try to borrow money. So please just continue to focus on your credit score. Next slide, please. Then creditors that use your information. At one time, we thought it was only banks and credit unions that would use your credit, and they were only using it to determine if they were going to give you a loan. But now, if you're trying to rent, you have potential landlords that are looking at your credit. Insurance companies are looking at your credit. Some jobs, your prospective and current employers look at your credit. Utility companies and cell phone companies look at your credit. Cell phone companies may determine, yeah, I'll give you a cell phone, but they may ask you for a down payment, so or a deposit. So all of these places look at your credit to determine what they can do for you. Next slide, please. So, just some ways to improve your credit score. Pay your bills on time. That is the number one thing, is to try to always pay your bills on time. If you have fallen behind on any of your bills, try to make arrangements with those lenders and then get current and stay current. Don't open up a lot of new accounts too quickly. I know at Christmas time, when you walk into some of these stores, Kohl's, they're like, oh, if you open up a credit card with us, we'll give you an additional 35% off. And you already may not have had a savings. So you're sitting there and you're like, oh man, I can use this credit card. They're going to give me additional 35% off. But lenders look at how many credit cards you have open and how many you're opening at once. Another big thing, we talked about getting your credit report. You need to check your credit report because there may be things on your credit report that are not accurate. And if they are not accurate, they don't belong to you. You can, and they are legitimate errors, you can dispute those things, especially when you are a junior. My husband's a junior, and there have been times that I don't know how they do it, but his dad's income information has been on our credit report. Fortunately, his dad pays bills good, so it didn't impact us in a negative way. But if we weren't checking our credit report, we wouldn't have seen that. Now, the next slide I have on here, or the bullet I have, is build credit by getting a secured credit card. Some people don't have a credit footprint, so you've never had credit. Not having credit is not as bad as having bad credit. However, it can hinder you just as much because banks don't have anything to go by. If you go in, they don't know if you're going to pay your bills on time because you don't have any credit. So I tell people, go to your bank and get a secured card. And basically, what a secured credit card will do, you'll go in, if you have $300, you can go in and say, hey, Navy Fed, I need to start establishing credit. I have $300. Can I get a secured card? So what they're going to do is take that $300. They're going to put it in a savings account. Then they're going to give you a secured card with a $300 limit because now you're playing with your money. So they're not really taking a big risk because you're playing with your 300. You can't go over that amount. And when you get that secured credit card, just make sure you don't max it out. You try to stay 30% and under on that, the amount you charge, and make those payments on time. And that secured credit card will help you to start establishing a history of payment. And then once you've done that and you've established that history of payment, in many instances, the banks will then say, okay, you've handled yourself really well with this. We're going to leave this $300 in your savings, or you can take it out, but you no longer have a secured card. We're going to give you a regular credit card. Make sure you keep balances on any of your credit cards, revolving credit, keep them very low. And the rule of thumb is to keep it under 30%. So try not to take any limits you have over 30%. Pay off any debt so that you're showing, on your credit that you're trying to pay off debt. And remember to check your credit report. And it does not impact your credit score when you check your own credit report. Next slide, please. So the next thing we're going to talk about, we've talked about going to Navy Fed or going to your bank. So we're going to talk a little bit about personal banking. Next slide. In 2020, there were 7.1 million families without a bank account. And with it, they're called unbanked Americans. When you are an unbanked American, the research that they've done says that in your lifetime, you're going to spend an average of over $40,000 in alternate financial services. And when we're talking alternate financial services, if you don't have a bank, you're probably getting money orders. You're relying on check cashing places to cash your checks. So that's what's happening with the unbanked portion of the United States or the Americans. Next slide, please. So what we want to say is if you don't have a relationship with the bank, you need to try to figure out a bank or credit union to have established a relationship with. Next slide. So when you're choosing your financial institution, just a couple differences between a credit union and a bank. A credit union, you have to be a member. So Navy Fed, you have to be in the military or retired, and then you can refer family members and friends. Or you can live in the city or work in the city that the credit union is in. And credit unions are not for profit. Banks, they're open to anyone. They are for profit. They're open to anyone. So anybody can walk into the Bank of America and say, hey, I want an account. And they can open an account with that bank. So those are the two differences between a credit union and a bank. Next slide, please. So the importance of having a bank account. A lot of times we hear people say, oh, I don't trust banks. So I get my checks cashed and I keep my cash with me. And the only thing that goes through my mind is suppose you did cash your check and your check was $1,000 and God forbid something happened at your house and you're saving your money at your house and your house catches on fire. Your money is gone. Whereas if you have an account with the bank, your money will be safe because up to $250,000 with a bank or credit union is insured. So if you are at Bank of America and you have $250,000 and that bank goes out of business or whatever, bankrupt or whatever banks do, then the FDIC, the Federal Deposit of Insured Corporation, will cover that money. And if you're with a credit union, the National Credit Unions Administration will cover up to $250,000. Having a bank account is an easy way to save money because what I find is one of the reasons I don't carry a lot of cash is when I have cash, for some reason, I tend to spend it quicker. If you have your money in an account, your whole check has gone to direct deposit, and you have to swipe to get your money, sometimes it makes you think and say, do I really need this? So it is an easier way to save money. And then accounts offer convenience to access your money. So even if if you're out of town, you can go to an ATM and you're able to get your money. So there really isn't any time that you are really separated from your money because you can always use that ATM. And as we said, bank accounts are cheaper because if you're unbanked over a lifetime, you're going to spend about $40,000 in fees, getting checks, cash, those types of things. And that's money that could be going into a savings. And bank accounts can help you access credit because if you have an account with the bank and you've established that rapport and they see that you're not overdrafting your accounts and that type of thing, when you need to try to get a credit card or a loan, you can go back to that bank that you've been banking with through your savings and your checking account. Online bill payments, another way that you can save money. When you don't have a bank account, you're probably writing checks or money orders. You can use online bill pay. And with online bill pay, you can do one or two options. You can set it up so that the payments are automatically sent out when your checks hit, or you can go in and you can set up and sit down and say, okay, I just got paid, so let me go ahead and send this person their money. And then direct deposit. There is nothing better than direct deposit because, say, for instance, this upcoming Friday, you and your friends are thinking about going out of town and you're like, oh man, I got to wait. We can't leave until after I get my check. Then I have to go get it cashed. Well, if you have direct deposit, Friday, you could be in South Africa and your money hits and you're good to go. You don't have to worry about being here to get your money. And then the biggest and best piece for me is mobile banking because I am an account stalker. I look at my account probably once or twice a day to see what's cleared so I can make sure everything is coming out. So it's accessible. I can look at it on my computer, I can look at it on my phone and know what's going on with my account. So those are some of the important tips of having a bank account. Next slide, please. One of the things, Bank On is a national organization, and Bank On, we have certified accounts. When you're looking at a bank account, a lot of times when you go in and you're opening a checking account and you go to Bank ABC, and they say, if you open this account, then we're going to give you $300 to open this account. But did you read all the fine print that if you don't keep $500 a month in this account, then we're going to charge you a fee? And if you don't do XYZ, so in the long run, even if they give you that $300, if you're not able to maintain and meet all of the requirements of having that account, then in the long run, the $300, you're probably spending more than the $300 you're getting. So whenever you are looking for accounts, you want to make sure that they are safe. And these safe accounts are accounts that don't allow overdraft or non-sufficient funds. So you don't have any surprises. You want to make sure that they're low cost. So our certified accounts or Bank On certified accounts, you can open them with $5 or less and you have no unpredictable fees. And even though they are meant to save you money, they're still functional. You can do the free deposits, you can do the withdrawals, you have the free bill pay, and you have mobile apps. So whenever you go into a bank, make sure that the account that you get into is going to be beneficial for you. Next slide. And if you're interested in looking into any of the bank accounts that the banks that we work with that offer the accounts, even though they're called Bank On National Certified Accounts, banks such as Dollar Bank, Truist, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, all of those offer these accounts. So even though we're talking about it from our perspective, you can always go to any of these reputable banks and ask them about the Bank On National Certified Accounts. Next slide. So we've talked about budgeting, we've talked about credit, savings, we've talked about personal banking. Now, we know that you're going to start that budget and we know you're going to be saving. How do you protect your money and your identity? Next slide, please. So what is identity theft? Next slide. So basically, identity theft is a common term used for all types of crimes in which someone wrongfully obtains and uses another person's data in some manner, and it involves fraud, deception, and usually it's for some type of economic gain. So they're using it so that they can get into your bank account and take your money or use your credit card and order things. So identity theft right now is the fastest growing crime in America. And as we said, that's one of the reasons why they're allowing people to run their credit report weekly. Next slide, please. So in 2014, 7% of the US population was a victim of identity theft. That's 17.6 million people. And about 500,000 people filed complaints about being victims of identity theft and fraud. Next slide. So ways identity theft is committed. Next slide, please. So you have shoulder surfing. So you know when you go to the ATM and they're telling you kind of cover your screen? Shoulder surfing is when somebody is behind you in line at the ATM or the grocery store and they're trying to see what your digits are. And then once they can see that, they're trying to figure out how to get that information so that they can get your money. We have business record theft, where people are stealing personal files from businesses and institutions, and getting that information, because sometimes businesses aren't keeping personal information as secure as it needs to be. Scamming is posting or posing as a legitimate company or a government agency to obtain your personal information. So a lot of times you get these emails saying that I'm Amazon or I'm this bank and your account has been breached, and they're wanting you to go and click and start putting in your personal information. Please don't ever do that. Now, a lot of phone fraud is happening and text fraud. If you ever get a call from your bank and they're telling you, hey, Ms. White, we're calling you because your account has been compromised. Can you give us your name, your address, and can you give us your bank account information? Nope, because your bank isn't going to ask that. When I call into my bank, I have a password. I give that password and it helps us and we go from there. So if that ever happens to you, if you get a text or a phone call, don't call them. Don't give them the information. Look on the back of your card and look at a number on there and call directly into the bank and tell them you just received a call. And then they can verify if it was a legitimate call or not. And then skimming. When you go to these like gas stations and you're putting your card in, shake that machine, because they've had a rash of skimming where they put on a face on top of the actual machine. So when you put your card in there, it's reading all of your digits. A lot of places are moving where you can actually tap your card so you're not having to put it in there. So if you go somewhere and you have the option of either inserting your card or tapping it, make sure you're tapping it to try to keep some form of safety. And then when people are stealing wallets and purses, please, 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 when you are out, we had one of our classes, we asked people, did they have a wallet? And we asked people to tell us what you have in your wallet. So we had someone that had their social security card. They had all the credit cards that they had their driver's license number. That is a walking identity theft right there. So in most instances, people are not using social security numbers. So please don't take your social security card around with you. And if you're going out, don't take all of your credit cards. If you know that there's one credit card in particular that you use, maybe take one or two. But if you have 5, 6, or 7 credit cards, please don't take all of those. And then you have dumpster diving and mail theft. You have people that are going in people's mailboxes and taking out their information or their mail that's coming because they're looking for those pre-approved credit card offers. And also dumpster diving. When you get things that you're not going to use, please shred them, because people do go in other people's trash and they are getting that information and figuring out how to open up accounts. So please remember, um, if you're at home and you see the mailman come, go and get your mail out. Shred your trash before you throw it out for any records that you're going to be putting in the trash, because we have to be really aware that identity theft is on the rise and we want to protect ourselves as much as possible. Next slide, please. So, who commits identity theft? Family members, friends, telemarketers, and computer hackers. And it is bad to say that family members and friends are number 1 and 2. And the reason it's really sad, because what happens with identity theft when it comes to family members? So say, for instance, I go to my sister's house and I've been having some financial difficulties and she has a brand new credit card that's sitting there. I take the credit card and I go home and I call it in, and oh man, she has a $5,000 limit. I need to pay off a couple of these bills. I haven't been able to buy any shoes lately. I'm going to go swipe and get that. And then my sister gets the bill and she's like, I've never used this credit card. So she contacts her bank and they say, okay, well, we're going to put in here that you didn't do it, but we're going to do an investigation. Well, the investigation leads to one of the places that I paid comes directly back to me. They call my sister and ask her, do you know this person? Yeah, that's my sister. Well, what happens at that point? Two options. I can press charges against my family member, and then the bank will make press charges and will make them pay, and then they'll have legal issues they're dealing with. Or I won't press charges. And if I don't press charges, then the bank is going to say, well, we feel like if you're not willing to press charges, you gave your sister permission to use the credit card. So that's your debt now. So in many instances, family members don't want to cause any undue stress or hardships between family members. So that's why I don't care who it is. When you have people come over, don't have your credit cards laying around. Don't give your PIN to people. Make sure everything is secured because we love our family, we love our friends, but sometimes things happen and it's not the best for everybody. So make sure you're thinking of all the ways that you can protect your identity, protect your credit cards, protect your PIN numbers from everybody, including family members and friends. Next slide, please. Now, one of some clues that you might see if you are a victim, you start seeing withdrawals from your bank account that you can't explain. You don't get your bills or other mail because people are getting in your mailbox taking your stuff. You're bouncing checks or your credit card declines. And you're starting to get calls from debt collectors about debts that you don't have a clue about. You find unfamiliar accounts or charges on your credit card. And then one that has been pretty big lately is the IRS notifies you that your tax return has already been filed. And you just filed yours and they're saying, nope, it's already been filed. So these are some clues that you may be a victim of identity theft. Next slide, please. So if you are a victim of identity theft, then the first thing you're going to want to do is make sure that you file a police report. Contact your lenders to let them know that your accounts have been compromised so that they can stop any more charges on those accounts. So those are just the main two things. And then your bank and the police will tell you what your next step should be. Next slide, please. So we have gone over several great topics that we love to talk about in our Bank On program and just in general when we're going out into the community doing presentations. If you have any questions about any of these presentations or any of the information we've gone over, I'm going to give you my information at the end of this, at the next slide. But the first thing I want to do is just talk quickly about our 5-month financial empowerment program. With our program, we go more in depth on the topics that we just covered. And it is a free 5-month financial education class. Once you are actually in the class, you are assigned a one-on-one financial coach so that that coach can help ensure that the things you're learning in the classroom, you're able to apply them to your own personal finances. We talk a lot about the importance of having a bank account. And then through our partners, as I stated, we're talking about the importance of having a bank account. And we have different like fairs where we will have people come in and you can talk to our bank partners about the low cost accounts. And then we have what's called the match savings. We truly believe so much in people establishing bank accounts, people saving, that when you come to this program, you complete the 5 months program and a couple pieces of paperwork we'll have you do, and you save $150, then we're going to match it $150. And with this program, we offer it in February and September. The cities are Chesapeake, Norfolk, and Virginia Beach that bring this program to you. And right now, we are offering our program virtually and in person, and each class is about 2 hours per class. So hopefully, we'll see some of you in some of our classes. Next slide, please. And once again, for more information, my name is Anita White. I'm the Regional Financial Empowerment Coordinator for the Bank on Hampton Roads program. And I do have my cell phone number and my email address on the slide so that if you have any additional questions about anything I covered, you need any financial education guidance, or you're thinking about joining one of our classes, please feel free to reach out to me and I'll be glad to help guide you on your next steps to your financial journey. Thank you guys for having me and enjoy the rest of your day.
Anita, thank you so much for all this information. The automatic savings, someone told me that back in 2013. It's the best thing I've ever had because as
Yep,
emergencies come up, having that money is like, whew, thank goodness, I don't have to go in debt.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yep.
so thank you so much for your time. I
Thank
hope
you guys.
everybody had a chance to learn a lot and have a great evening.
You too. Enjoy your evening. Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Uh-huh.